We are live. Welcome in, everybody. Happy Saturday. Welcome to the Nick Club Wrestling Happy Hour. I am one half of your host and virtual bartender, Mr. Nick Teodoro. Joining me, as always, is my tag team partner in life and the birthday girl, my wife, Miss Nicole. Nicole, what are you having this evening or this afternoon on your birthday of all days?
But I am doing a Surfside. We'll hit the hard stuff later. But Mr. Nick, tell the kids what you're drinking and what we're getting into today.
We are talking Vince McMahon documentary part 2, episodes 4 through 6, and I'm having a Schweppes, a little ginger ale to get my stomach settled for the evening festivities. So, Nikki, let's get into it. Vince McMahon docuseries part 2, your takeaways. Her overall thoughts.
So now that we've seen the whole thing together, I still feel the same sentiment. I feel like there still wasn't enough that I didn't know. Again, I think we just scratched the surface. I think there's obviously so much. Even 6 hours, I feel like every topic was like a blip, and I wanted more. And I feel like I feel like I'm in the middle. I don't think, because I guess the two opinions, is it was a hit piece or it didn't go into, they didn't hit him enough with harder hitting questions about things or didn't ask him to elaborate on some of the things that he said. And I think it's kind of in the middle. I don't think it was a straight up assassination gotcha piece. And I definitely think I don't think they did it verbally of them asking him to elaborate, but he would say something. And it's one of the things I love, it was, well, not love's not the right word. When he's like, oh, well, the Attitude Era was still family friendly. There was no guns or anything like that. And they pan to Pillman's got a gun and all this other stuff that so a lot of the things is he said, and then laid over it was things contradicting. So it was maybe they didn't ask him the questions, but they kind of just say you're lying.
Yeah. It's the cuts about like you always would with a politician, right? The same thing of again you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. So to me, it was kind of a history lesson to some extent in wrestling if you weren't a wrestling fan, because again he is the patriarchy to a lot of it, right? Or the patriarch. Yeah, patriarchy is the group. So there is a lot that he's involved with and that he takes away. And this is where episodes 4 through 6 is where the rubber meets the road and things business picks up even more, so to speak. Where we see this is, this episode 4 is dealt with is Attitude. That's the title. So we see the beginnings of what is the Attitude Era in WWF at the time. And just how that all came about. To me, I thought it was kind of funny that he said Bruce Pritchard said the moment that the Attitude Era was born was actually the Shawn Michaels stuffed trunks incident, I guess, where he said it was gauze, not a sock, but regardless. And how, I guess, just him being bold enough to try something out or not care and produce the attitude that he was looking for. That was kind of a neat little take on it. I don't know, if you had any reflections on that.
Yeah, I don't know, because I guess people think that the Attitude Era started with the Montreal Screwjob, and I think that's the birth of the Vince McMahon, Mr. McMahon character, but not necessarily the Attitude Era. But I think Undertaker said in the series, it wasn't just one thing. All these little things were happening in succession. And I don't think Shawn Michaels putting things down his pants and having these little short shorts and boots started a whole thing. I think it's just all these little things that lead up to the big, we're in the Attitude.
Well, they were kind of going along with the culture at the time, right? And everything that they were seeing at the time. So this is kind of how they went with it. It was edgier TV. It was everything was pretty that was back when, oh my God, was Jerry Springer and all that.
car crash TV is what they can call it now.
Yeah, and that was ultimately what birthed and helped to birth what was ECW, and then that was actually a good portion because you saw Paul Heyman obviously in this documentary a lot, featured prominently. ECW and its effect on Vince and the Attitude Era. I guess what did you think? Heyman kind of alludes to like he saw what we were doing in ECW and pushing the envelope with more violence, more sex, and things like that. And he thinks Vince gravitated to that, obviously, probably for the latter reasons, but and that's what he saw as the product changing, right? Because WCW to that point was killing him in the ring, killing WWE in the ratings, and the NWO was becoming this massive faction and this super over group. He needed to do something, and he talked about changing the product, and the beginnings of the Attitude Era was affected again by ECW.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do you have any?
Well, I think it was surprising that Vince did say that he thought it was great or he loved it. Like he was into ECW, and then he was kind of like, "Of course he was."
Yeah, like why wouldn't you? But I think the key for him in this whole, I guess, the first half of this Attitude Era, portion of this episode is that he learned how much further. I mean, he did it in the beginnings, how to push the envelope with everything. And they interviewed The Rock in Portland. And he's just like, The Rock was like, listen, the Nation was an edgier group. Like that's what it was. Like we were growing up and like being held down and being able to kind of fight the power. That's what this was. This is what the culture was like. Again, in the the 90s was coming up, and obviously DX. We talk about all the stuff that they were doing, but and then Stone Cold being able to invent his character. So I think Vince was maybe, necessity is the mother of invention, and losing in the ratings. Hey, we're going to try something out. We're going to push the envelope and see what we can come up with. And was the birth of all these great characters. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Do you have any other particular thoughts on ECW or the Attitude Era?
I don't know. Do we beat it to death about the Montreal Screwjob was the third episode, right? So I think the one thing, I guess, because Bischoff was like, oh, well, basically, Vince McMahon, like, ripped us off. Like, DX was trying to be like the NWO, and he was trying to be like me when he was Vince McMahon. Like, I was like the diabolical boss first. And I was like, Mr. McMahon and Bischoff are very, very different.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, I get, like, the Bischoff, power authority figure being a heel.
Bischoff just wanted to be one of the cool kids.
Yeah, yeah.
Like...
I mean, yeah, I think you just want to be accepted. So,
yeah.
No, I could definitely, see that. Yeah, the characters were way different. But to Vince's point in the documentary, he's like, I did it better.
Yeah. That's what he's like, oh, he thinks I copied him. And he's like, well, I just did it better.
I don't know. I mean, what do you all think about the whole Bischoff, as people are popping in here, the Bischoff character versus the Vince McMahon character? I mean, obviously, chronologically, it did come first, but did you think one was better than the other? Obviously, I mean, I think we're pretty much in unison here that the Vince character is better, but the differences to me were, kind of to your point, like it was like a cocky guy who was in power, nerd in power, Bischoff.
Yeah, he was like the nerd getting beaten up, and then he joined the cool kids so he wouldn't get beaten up anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
after the power,
I wasn't watching hardcore. Like, again, like I was definitely popping back and forth between the channels, but like my main was WWE. But I don't know, like, was he like being mean to like the WCW? I feel like Vince just like shit on everybody. Like, I don't know. Did Bischoff really like? Was he like mean to DDP? Sting? Or is he just, well, I'm the cool kid. I'm the nerd that's the cool kid now.
I don't remember. I really, the early days of Bischoff in NW, I still don't remember much of it. But again, it was kind of just them a little bit. Everyone's kind of going back and forth, like taking shots. I feel like and jabs, left, right. But it moves us into what is, again, Vince is marred with controversy. This whole documentary and the Owen Hart incident. And Vince's decision to have the show go Obviously, bringing back memories like we were talking about, like that day. I remember watching the pay-per-view live, and it was just such a somber, weird, like obviously like moment. And like, how do you see JR and King just got back from like basically getting the news of the death of Owen's death, like it just that whole moment of like, oh my god, what the hell are we witnessing here? And to still have the show go on is it's crazy. It's crazy to me. What I thought was interesting about this whole was that, and the way Vince put it, in that it was like a cut out or a dark segment, because I guess they were airing a vignette, so the lights weren't fully drawn.
Yes.
So you couldn't fully see everything that went down, but
yeah. So basically, they were like Owen was setting up, so everything was dark. So they were showing a thing on the screen. So like they were saying they didn't see him fall. So since the live crowd didn't see him fall, he was going on with the show.
Right. Yeah.
And like, because you see King comes back and sits next to JR and basically like speechless. He's like, it's bad. And then I forget who it was. Was it Pritchard? Or was it Michael Hayes that was in Ross's ear and was like, Owen's gone?
Yeah, Pritchard.
Yeah. So then JR has to announce it to the watcher, like the pay-per-view crowd. So the pay-per-view people, you're watching it on TV, you know Owen's dead. But the people in the crowd don't know Owen's dead.
There had to have been, like, there's inevitably people staring at the ring. Like, you're not always, like, looking at the vignettes.
I guess Vince is, I guess, implying that you only saw him getting carted out.
Yeah, and there was eyes that definitely saw that.
Like, if you're in the front row, you're in the first couple of rows.
Yeah, you, for sure. I don't think you need to be that far, even that, and then, that like, close, so to speak, to see what. Yeah, it was a very
the blood of Owen still in the ring, on the mat, and people are wrestling over it.
Yeah,
and I guess I know we watched it live because I watched everything live then, but I guess I didn't get the gravity of the situation. I guess being 10, 11, 12, I like they said, and I don't think it registered until like obviously the next night. But again, I have not will not and won't rewatch the pay-per-view, but seeing them show the clips on the documentary, and I've seen the cut before of Jeff and Deborah just like not like, I don't know how Jeff Jarrett cuts a promo on her boobs, and she is just, she can't even look.
Yeah, I don't know how you go out there.
She's like, we're praying for you, Owen, and she's she's not looking at camera, and you can tell that she is bawling, and Jeff Jarrett is cutting whoever was it, D'Lo or whoever.
No, it's Val Venus.
Oh, it was Val Venus. He's like, oh, you think these puppies are yours? And she's just like, beside herself. I was like, I give a lot of credit to Jeff Jarrett because he posts things and him in AEW talking about how much him and Owen were close, how much he loved Owen Hart. I don't know how he pulled that together. Yeah. And then they cut to like the Undertaker crying in the ring, and it's just like, if the Undertaker's crying. Yeah,
there was a lot. There was a lot of crazy emotions and craziness to go through that. And then the other part of it is prior to that, the Bret Hart. Because
do you want to say it, or
as I call him, the Bret Hartist.
Oh God!
But and how his tinfoil hat at the time, he said he does in later episodes, say, okay, like I found out it was legit, but like he's like, did they put a hit out on Owen to get back at me for leaving? Like, you're not that big of a deal.
They're not going to kill your brother in a live pay-per-view to get back at you. The fucking ego of Bret Hart blows my mind.
Yeah.
But he said he agreed once the police did the investigation, because it was Kansas City.
Yeah, I don't know.
Whatever they did their investigation, and the lead investigator on the case from that city called Brett and was like, it wasn't a WWE thing. They hired this company to do the job. They used that faulty clip thing that Martha showed on the Dark Side of the Ring. And then they sued the company for using the faulty carabiner thing. Which, again, carabiner, like, that's, your whole life because of one faulty carabiner clip. But it's just like, they're killing Owen to get back at me. And it's like, and then Vince McMahon did say, like, that's the ego of Brett.
Yeah.
Because then also Brett said that if it were Shane that had fallen, that Vince would have stopped the show. And basically, because Vince is an asshole, was basically like, nope, like, that's just Brett's ego. He's like, if I fell, scrape me off the ring and the show goes on.
Yeah, well, Vince is a businessman. He wants to make money. And clearly that's important. So, from one family that doesn't like Vince to his own family. So, we move into episode 5, where the title is Family Business. And it's a lot of the background. And Stephanie and Shane and Linda, I think, pops up, obviously, a good amount in this episode. So, I'll start overall, I guess, just your takeaways on Stephanie McMahon's feelings on her father's on-screen requests.
Yeah. I think kind of Triple H said it best, because I wanted to hear, like, I think Shane's very candid in this. You get the very corporate Stephanie. But like Triple H says, Stephanie has a very hard time separating the boss, Vince McMahon, the character, Mr. McMahon, and her father. And I think, thank God she said no to some things. I feel like maybe there's still some things she should have said no to. But I can't even imagine having your dad, like your father who gave birth to you, and as a daughter, the bond between you and your father is tremendous. So having that, and then having this has him as a crazy boss, but then him as the character, and then, like, I don't know if you want to, like, they had a match. So
that's well. First off, backtracking.
Backtrack.
So first off, he was talking about when they were going to get married with Stephanie Triple H. He wants to have the wedding on a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And he was kind of upset about that. And Stephanie hints that he was really upset that he and called her selfish for not wanting to do it on a pay-per-view, which I don't know if it affected it, but leading up to her wedding, she does the week of her wedding.
6 days before her wedding, they have that crazy match where he chokes her out. Was it the hardcore match? I think it was the hardcore match.
Yeah, with the pipe.
And he chokes her out with a pipe. And like they had to put their hands in and do a little to say, he just looks like he chokes the shit out of her.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, like, the way it seems and the way, I don't know if it's Bruce, Pritchard, like others talked about Stephanie, is that, again, she's daddy's girl. She's going to do almost whatever he asks, within reason, because then she ultimately rejects the one storyline that would have been ridiculous, the incestuous storyline when she was actually pregnant with Triple H, their first.
There was her first daughter, that Vince McMahon wanted it to be revealed that he, or Shane, I think he picked both, would have been the father of the child. Which, also, maybe this is the one thing I didn't know. They alluded to, when Vince said in that Playboy article, that the first 12 years before he went with Senior, that there was a lot of abuse, and then he said there was incest. And then he did this whole thing that he's like, I don't believe, this is the beginning of this episode, he's like, I don't believe that, like, if you're raised as an abuser, that you're going to be an abuser. And again, it just cuts to him just beating the shit out of both of his kids.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, all right, maybe you actually didn't rape Stephanie. Sorry, R word. But you're trying to imply that you did on your TV show. And then you're mad at her in real life that she won't do the pay-per-view that you want her to do. So you're going to fight her 6 days before the wedding. And apparently Linda was like, if you give her a black eye or if you mess up her face for this wedding, I will divorce you. Like, Linda did not want this match to happen. Like, it's just a little crazy pants.
Yeah, no, he's pure businessman. But, so moving on from...
I'm sorry, just to backtrack. Again, maybe, I don't know. I don't want to tune in to see that there's something Vince did to Stephanie that now she's pregnant.
Yeah, no, it's stupid.
Like, and then, like, obviously all the genetic things, this baby's not going to come out looking right.
Well, I mean,
It's
Vince.
like, how does he think that's going to be ratings?
I don't know. It's because it's Vince McMahon, and he thinks everything revolves around him, and everyone wants to watch him. So
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
yeah, you did. But it's your birthday, so we'll let it fly. Anyway, moving on from one of his children to another. So in the same episode, we go into Shane McMahon's relationship with Vince, and very similar to Vince and his father, doesn't really seem to get any respect or acknowledgement during anything. I think this is the episode where he also talks about Shane wanting to buy UFC in the infancy of UFC coming out.
Yeah, before Dana White bought it.
David said Vince McMahon is retarded. You know, that's a fair point, David. Welcome back. But yeah, so going back into it, and he buys, or he wants to buy UFC, but he didn't think it was a good purchase at the time because UFC was a sports.
Yeah, he didn't like their model, their business model.
Which, ironically, now here we are, and you're merged with UFC, and basically they're just as big, I think, as WWE. Or getting there. So we go more into that, and Shane said he was unhappy with a lot of things. One of the things, I think he hated that storyline, the Linda McMahon, Trish Stratus, the affair storyline,
the drugging.
Yeah, he could not stand that, which obviously led up to the match. But again, it was a huge pop.
The Linda pop.
The Linda pop at WrestleMania. So that was obviously something that I don't know if that created fiction, because again, he doesn't blur the lines between reality and what's in WWE. So comes up, and behind the scenes, Shane's probably doing a lot of work, and maybe in some ways looked at, obviously he's the son, as the heir apparent. Didn't seem like that it was going that direction. So Shane, they document Shane's, I don't want to say disappearance, but his leaving, his departure. That's the word. From WWE, and that seven-year period that he was gone, and everything that kind of happened, and it kind of just, I don't know if he said he just needed to get away, and that kind of brought up that story, which I thought was crazy, the Paul Heyman Shane Vince story, where they were talking creative. I don't know what storyline it was. Yeah, they don't mention it. Didn't say. And basically it gets to the point where Shane and Vince are so heated that Vince says, Shane, if you want this that badly, you stick this knife. He grabs an actual knife, puts it next to his chest, and he said, you basically stab me with it. So this story. Well, oh God.
Can I elaborate on it a little bit more? Because I literally just watched. So basically, whatever Shane wanted to do, again, Paul didn't say, but he's like, not while I'm alive. And he grabs a knife off his plate, and he moves like his jacket to show like his heart, and like was like, then you need to basically kill him. And he's like, if you don't, then I know what kind of man you are, and you're gonna either have to buy me out, like I bought out my dad, or you're gonna have to remove me, like I would have had to do, because my father wasn't doing things the way I wanted. So it was like, if like grandpa didn't sell the company, like was he gonna kill grandpa?
Yes.
Like that's a little, if you read into that a little bit. But then knowing that Shane wouldn't stab him, which is insane. I know what kind of man you are. Like, how does that not fuck with Shane's head? My dad either wants to kill me or he thinks I'm not a man. Like, whew, that's a mind fuck and a half.
Well, I mean, I think Vince is just like, he grew up, again, estranged, and all his backstory we talked about in the last episode, just being abused and everything else. But like, he just, it seems like he's poured everything into just business, and that's how he is in everything.
Yeah. Paul Heyman said the only monogamous relationship that Vince ever had is with his business.
Yeah, exactly. Which is ironic, because we'll get to it shortly. It's not the only business he tries to create. So we glance over it. This becomes, again, as the trend of controversies, we move along. They touch on the Sable lawsuit, which becomes, ironically, I think, well, it really isn't. It's probably the most public. I know the referee Rita was the first to kind of come to light. But the Sable lawsuit really was the first that, like, to me, like, I think started opening.
Yeah, well, she just kind of said that they were making her do stuff that she didn't want to do, and it was like degrading.
Right, and then they were doing it like on TV, but
like there wasn't like Vince like did something to her, I believe.
No, but he was putting her in these like or the creative was putting her in these positions that she didn't want to be in, which again kind of lends itself to the theme, the overarching theme of like the blurred lines that seemingly Vince had taken liberties with. So moving more on the successful side of his business, because again, he is a successful businessman, we get into when he eventually does buy WCW. And I guess that moment, what were your, because I just remember like we were both talking about it and like just seeing him on TNT or TBS, whatever it was.
Like, you don't know why I'm here. Like, you don't know why I'm here.
Yeah. Like,
like
it's just like,
Razor of the Scott Halls.
It's crazy to me. Like, just like that whole moment that he came out there and no one knew what was going on. Like, even the wrestlers, like, what the hell's going to happen? Who's going to show up on WCW? Who's going to be in WWE? Right. And like everything that happened with that. And that I think was really, it was a pivotal moment in general, but like for wrestling, it was a big kind of like decline, right? Like that started, I think, the decline of like, because the competition wasn't there.
Right.
That's where Vince kind of rested and did whatever the hell he wanted. And that's, right towards the end of the Attitude Era and then the Ruthless Aggression.
Well, I think there's an in-betweensy period. I think, like obviously there's Attitude Era. Then, depending on who you listen to, the death of the Attitude Era is when Stone Cold turned heel and aligned with McMahon at Mania, and they drank beers together. Because then that era, and then the whole alliance invasion thing that didn't really work out because you didn't have any of the main stars. You had Booker T, as much as Booker T's Booker T. You didn't really have the star power there because they were all sitting down out with their guaranteed money contracts.
Yeah.
From AOL Time Warner. So I don't know, and then it kind of bled into the Ruthless Aggression.
Fair enough. Well, as Vince is doing his business purchases, he decides he's going to open up a football league. So they touch on the failure of the XFL, but the XFL, the one season, which actually did come back for a second season, but like 15 years later, and just reflecting on that and his experience, the XFL, although it was a failed, experience at which most NFL professional football leagues that are not the NFL end up failing, but what it did is it brought that cinematography to the NFL, like that camera angle that you see now on Sunday Night Football that is behind the quarterback, the interviews on the sidelines during the games. That was stuff that CBS, Fox, the NFL was not doing, and that Vince McMahon brought the entertainment value into sports, and it really did change the landscape of how professional sports is viewed and produced. So, I mean, while a failure, yes, business-wise, the XFL was very much a big proponent in revolutionizing sports in a lot of ways. I don't know if I'm pretty sure you probably didn't watch it.
No, I think like everybody else, we watched like the first episode match game. I know like it was like the New Jersey, wasn't it the New Jersey Hitmen or whatever it was?
Yeah.
Like you watched because you didn't know what this is gonna be, and then you realize it's shitty football. Then it's like, all right, well I really don't care about all the extra stuff then.
Yeah.
The primary thing is not great.
You dropped the ball.
Yeah, I think I watched like the first
tackles.
Whatever. It's like, oh, this thing, and then it was like.
Yeah, but it was definitely neat in how they did it. But then it got a little gamey after a while. But moving on to the next controversy in the documentary, we bring up, it changed everything as well, the Chris Benoit murders, and the show going on the I guess honorary show, and everything that incident led to. changed, I think, not only WWE but sports as well. Like the CTE thing, and you talk about Chris Nowinski and everything that happened there, and how all the studies that they wanted to gather on brain injuries and brain trauma that conclude, because this was a national incident, right? Well, not national, but it garnered
national news.
National news, yeah. So and now you see everything that happened post that incident. But again, I mean, his reaction to what happened the night of, like, I don't know that. I mean, not all the facts came out when aired, so like I don't know how much at fault anyone.
If you listen to the Dark Side of the Ring, I think they had it scheduled where it was going on anyway. But because it was just like Chris, Nancy, and Daniel are dead. It's like, okay, well, let's pause a minute, because that's 3 people in the family dead. You would think, like, take a step back, because then it's like, there has to be some foul play. Like, unless it was like a gas leak, which I feel like you would know relatively quick.
Fair.
And then you walk in, and obviously there was murder. So there's no way. I guess they just got the phone. I have to go back and do that thing. So they got the phone call that the 3 of them are dead. Then I feel like you need to pause, because like obviously something happened, and then going into the house. Clearly, you can tell. Obviously, it was a murder-suicide.
Yeah, but I don't. Yeah, if they had the news, it's a different situation. Yeah, I don't know how you have the show, but it did again. But it led to Chris Nowinski, and all those studies. Unfortunately, yeah, like something terrible happens, but it led to the studies. And WWE, as he says in the documentary, is the first. Was the first group to really be open to these studies and letting them explore.
I think it took a minute, because it's like, again, Vince on the documentary in the interview just said that, because at first people were saying roid rage, and then he was like, steroids has nothing to do with this, and then he's like, Benoit just went crazy, he just lost it. I'm like,
But the way they say, his brain was one of the worst. Like that they've ever seen from any athlete.
And then it gets gross, because then you see the old timer wrestlers saying that, Benoit didn't get concussions, he was just selling. And then Hogan pretended to do a wrist lock. He's like, oh my God, you're killing me. Doing a diving headbutt every night
as a finishing
move for years, multiple times a week, is going to mess with your brain. And then
look at Hogan with like his leg drop. Even his leg drop.
Yeah, like you're like you had to get how many surgeries on your hips? Same with Taker doing the leg drop too. You had to get all you're my surgeries. I'm selling, brother. Like
yeah.
There's a consequence. Even though something as innocuous as doing a leg drop, you're still hitting that mat. You're still putting pressure on your body. Like, what do you think you're doing to your head?
Exactly.
All those, apparently Undertaker was upset that they stopped doing chair shots to the head.
No.
Hello. And then...
then you bring it up. The changes that came because of this.
Can we still back? Because I want to bring up what Stone Cold said, because I maybe lose a little respect for him. That he was saying that if you get a lot of concussions, then maybe you're not good at wrestling. Go tell that to Bryan Danielson, because he's one of the top wrestlers in the world, and how many concussions he has, also battling CTE.
That's fair. Yeah.
And he goes,
I think there is some validity to, again, if some people if you're being safe and doing things the right way, yeah, you can do some moves that are less dangerous. I think that was what he probably was trying to get at to some extent. Is that some people we're talking about Sasha Banks. Sasha Banks is always injured because she's reckless a lot of ways. Yeah. So I think that was maybe kind of the point.
Yeah, but then he also said, "I'm not a CTE guy. It's an actual brain condition. How can you, again, Crazy people fighting science.
Exactly.
I'm not a CTE guy. Like, oh, okay. So, Dr. Stone Cold Steve Austin, please tell me your doctorate degree.
Right. No, exactly.
You're looking at brain scans and doing research.
But the Benoit incident does lead to all the, to the Nowinski WWE relationship and the studies. Changes in wrestling do happen. The chair shots, they eliminate chair shots to the head, which is a smart thing to do. We see now lighter schedule, the wellness policy that WWE instituted more recently within the last decade. So a lot of the things that they're doing are to prolong the careers and the health of the talent. So it was unfortunately a terrible incident that happened, but it did lead to some good. Moving along. So I guess we get towards the latter part of this documentary, and this is where Vince is bowing out, and somebody's at our door during the show.
Don't love this.
And this is a very interesting time. This is what happens when you live. Sometimes things happen and the dog's about to freak out. So we'll probably have to cut this a little short. Let me see if I can just put us into a little quick commercial break here. And we will, as the dog is running upstairs. But I want to hear from all of you. What are you thinking about the changes that happened? As Jackson is very opinionated about this as well. What did you think about the changes that were going on after the death of Chris Benoit, the studies with Christopher Nowinski? How did that? I mean, again, like when I first came out for me, chair shot to the head. Yeah, it's awful. I get it, but it was like, how much are things going to change? Because now it's a chair shots to the back. A lot of different elements, but it is for the better. I think there's ways you can get around it. But as my lovely co-host and the birthday girl is finding her way back here, I'm sure it was just someone just eager to get to the happy hour.
Do you want me to tell you what just happened?
No, we'll figure it out.
I'll tell you
off air.
Sorry.
But yeah, I thought I held down the fort pretty good while you're gone, relatively speaking. But going back into the latter part of this documentary, we do see, this is where, again, like I said, going back, Vince bows out because the Janelle Grant lawsuit news breaks, and this is essentially the latter part of the second half of the episode, of the final episode, where you see all the things compounding for Vince, and Vince's exit from WWE, which I remember that was the year and a half that it's been with him he's in, he's out, he's in, Stephanie's in, Stephanie's out. And that whole we kind of touched on it earlier, like the relationship with Stephanie and Vince, but like the fact that she was co-CEO and then steps down when Vince comes back in, there's a lot of just weirdness.
So he retired, and then Stephanie did that thank you Vince thing on SmackDown, which is cringe. And then he was gone for 6 months, and then decided, people said that he was itching to get back. That he made, since he's the board voted down for bringing him back, but he has majority stake or majority whatever
ownership.
Yeah, but of the board votes. So he came back, and then I believe that's when he came back. And he's like, "Now together forever," blah, blah. And I was like, "Get off the screen." And then people were not happy, creatively, that he was back and doing things again. And then the other shoe drops and this crazy pants. And honestly, I know the Janelle Grant stuff. I was like, I don't think I can read this. And then the stuff that they said in the documentary was like, oh God.
Yeah, there was a lot of
grossness. So again, after that
disgust.
came out, he basically TKO kind of forced him out.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah. No, he doesn't have the power that he did to overrule everyone to stay.
Well, yeah. So then he came back, and that's when he was like going to sell.
Right. Yeah. He came back specifically just to sell.
Yes.
And which is basically where right now he sold his shares. He's officially gone. He's been gone. So
I sort of do love that, like, before they kind of went into the Janelle Grant stuff, they asked people like, would Vince ever retire? And then Hulk Hogan was like, oh, like, this wouldn't work without Vince.
Yeah.
And I think 2024 of Triple H in charge has been chef's kiss. And I think that's what they kind of alluded to. And I think there's some criticism that, like, they kind of ended on, like, a lighter note. Like, oh, business is gone and business is doing great. And we're going to Netflix in January. Like, a little softer ending.
Yeah.
But again, I think, I don't know if this is your next point or not. I don't know what your next point
Well, my next question.
I don't want to get ahead of your
question is, again, because they ask you at the end of the documentary, I know, Bailey, I know you really want to get involved in this and she wants to call in, but you can't call in because you're a cat.
I don't know if people hear her screaming though.
Yeah. But the question is, what is Vince McMahon's legacy? Because nobody but Tony Atlas can answer, because Tony answers everything.
Vince said he doesn't have one. And everyone's like, oh my God, what? And then fucking John Cena was like, I'm not the person to answer that question.
Yeah, nobody wants us to be on the record to say.
And then I forgot what Tony said. Tony said something. Oh, he said the greatest promoter of all time.
Yeah, which I agree. Like, I think you could argue him and like Dana White like are right next to each other as two of the greatest, the top promoters of all time in any event. Maybe
P.T. Barnum.
I'm not sure. What did he promote?
The circus?
Oh, the circus guy. Oh, yeah.
The Greatest Showman?
I think, I'm not a circus guy. So like, it's kind of hard. Full-time Fanatics chiming in. His legacy will always be the greatest wrestling promoter of all time. Yeah, I
agree. And that's what kind of the second part of what Tony Atlas said was just like, kind of good or bad, or like, even though there are things that I don't disagree with him, or he was, I forgot, I should have wrote it down, whatever quote it was, that like, yeah, like he did a lot of messed up things, but he did a lot of, like, again, it's like hard to, we talk about this with Kane, it's like, is to separate, or a bunch of other wrestlers, to separate like what they did for the industry and not the person behind the curtain.
Yeah, it's tough.
But that's, I think this was probably the intent of the documentary, was because they asked like, who is Vince McMahon versus Mr. McMahon? Is there a difference? And then Vince was like, yeah, no, I'm not Mr. McMahon. And everyone else is saying he is. There's no differential between the person.
He'll be remembered for all the foul things that leaks and said. Yeah, sadly. I mean, but that's the thing. It's like,
it can't be sadly because you did it.
Yeah, no, exactly. Gross. Yeah, don't be a POS.
Don't be gross.
Yeah.
And then gross is a gross understatement of what is allegedly done. But I mean, it's hard. It's again, Nick and I do this podcast. I love pro wrestling so much, and Vince is the reason that we have what we have.
Right.
And it's like, because of him, I have my favorite thing in the world. I met my favorite person in the world. But it's just like all the crap that he's done. It's just like, oh, why do you create this beautiful thing, but you're such a disgusting person behind it?
Yeah, I mean, well, you see, well, there's a lot of other celebrities. Like, I mean, you've seen the same things. Like, it's kind of a similar thing with, like, I hate to say it, like all the allegations with Michael Jackson, and now you're seeing like the Diddy stuff. Like, it's like, I like the songs, but I want to separate the songs from the person and like the talent.
I want to listen to Remix to Ignition, Hot and Fresh Out the Kitchen, but R. Kelly is also gross. So it's just like, can I listen to that? Do I don't want to give that person money for making the song because you did all this gross stuff? But it's again the art from the artist, and I think that's what we. Yeah, it's hard to with Vince McMahon. Like, you don't like. Kane and Glenn Jacobs is stupid. Kane was a great wrestler, but I think with Vince, Mr. McMahon, it's very, I think the two are entwined.
Yeah, no.
And that's like the kind of ending quote is just like some, like living the gimmick. And
yeah.
like Hulk Hogan lives his gimmick. Like, oh Jesus, why do you do that?
I always clicked the wrong one. There we go.
God.
Yeah, like well, Hogan.
You and then like Ultimate Warrior maybe is the best example of living the gimmick. I don't know. It's hard. And again, I think like John Cena said it really crappily. I think Cody Rhodes on that one press conference after kind of.
This is a great question, and Full-Time Fanatics, the phone lines are open if you want to click in and call in and talk a little bit about this, but this is a great point. Do you think that this is why Shane McMahon's itching to get back into wrestling, somehow at least recover the McMahon name? I think he's 100% coming back after watching this. First off, we watched the Bray Wyatt documentary, and we said obviously they hinted it then, but I just knew, I'm like, he's Uncle Howdy's coming back, and I just got the feeling Shane, like, with a twinkle in his eye, with a tear in his eye, wants to come back, and he said, "Well, Ric Flair
is one I struggle with so hard. I love Ric Flair. When we got married, we came out to Ric Flair's entrance. He's actually, I can see him. We have a signed photo of him in our basement wall. But I also know he's very disgusting, and I personally brush it off and until watching that woman in the Dark Side of I almost said Dark Side of the Moon. Dark Side of the Ring documentary with that flight attendant on the plane ride from hell, of her crying and saying she was cornered and she could not get out, and he was just like swinging dick, and it's just like, oh, it breaks my heart. I don't know. I think I can say it's hard. I love Ric Flair, but he's also a gross old man. Well, I guess he wasn't that old back then, but it's just like, it hurts. It's like you love these people, and it's like so many, like, I love Marty Scurll. Can't talk about Marty Scurll anymore. Jimmy Havoc. Can't talk about Jimmy Havoc anymore. It's like, just wrestle and just don't be gross to women in weird places.
I don't know. So as we wind down, so if you want to call in, I know we got some people in the chat here. If you feel like chiming in, you can write in the comments section. If you want to actually call in and talk with us, the call-in link is there, the StreamYard link. Feel free to do that as well. But as we wind down here, just overall, I guess, Jerry Springer, final thoughts.
I don't know. Again, I feel like there was very few nuggets in here that like I didn't know, and I just, again, maybe I wanted them to push to Vince more, I guess. It is basically, it felt like Vince said something, Meltzer counteracted it, or Tony Atlas, and like there was no like discussion, there wasn't any further thing. It's like Vince said a thing, Meltzer said this, we showed some pictures. Like, I don't know, I wanted maybe more, and I feel like I wanted more from Stephanie, I wanted more from Triple H, I wanted to hear more from Paul, because we said this before coming down here, like, Paul Heyman was so eloquent. Like, I can listen to Paul Heyman talk all day. I can't wait for him to be back on my TV. Like, I want to hear more from them. Like, I feel like this, because they were like, oh, we have over 100 hours.
Yeah.
And we got 6. Even less than that, because most of it was like, 50 minutes, 52 minutes.
Their buddies that don't barely lead. Shocked how much Meltzer appeared in the season documentary. He's really coming off well to the casuals. Yeah. Well, because he's obviously he's super knowledgeable, and he's been around for so long that, like, but positioning it into like what was happening during pop culture was at the time is important.
And also, honestly, the framework of it. I think Meltzer himself is a little polarizing. I think some people think Meltzer is gospel, and then some people are like, he's full of shit.
Well, I think a lot of people think the ones that hate on him are ones because like feel like he was kind of like a failed wrestler. So like he's kind of like you started the dirt sheets because you didn't get your career off the ground, and like his whole thing was like, I think he basically wasn't the ring boy scandal. It was like he brought that to light. I'm pretty sure he was the one he was on one of the panels on like Maury or something.
Like he didn't bring it to light. He was just on one. It was on the Phil Donahue panel, but he was already doing the Wrestling Observer by then.
Yeah. True. Yeah. True. I don't know. Just like. Again, there was a lot. I think the back and forth was was decent. Yeah, it was definitely a lot of Meltzer, a lot of Tom Pritchard.
Also, I was surprised a lot of Tony Atlas. I feel like we heard Tony talk more than we heard Paul Heyman, and obviously I'd rather hear the opposite. And then also,
well, everyone's got. The other thing is, I when I look at these, I think of the people that talk the most are the ones that want to, just like wrestlers, get in their spot, and it's like people that you don't hear from that probably don't get booked, or still like Tony Atlas is still doing the indies a lot, and I feel like he's like, all right, I know this is gonna be a moment to get more, a bunch more bookings, and seize my opportunity.
I know, because I watched the video you told me not to watch, but I watched it anyway. So bringing up and I didn't realize this because we watched it so spread apart, but watching another podcast do a thing about this, saying that Jimmy, because they show everyone sitting down at first, they're getting all mic'd up and then cut a lot of the candid stuff. But Jimmy Hart said, I don't know how much I can say. I don't know what they want getting out. And then you basically saw Jimmy once or twice after that. So was it a lot?
I'm sorry, Jimmy
Hart.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah. I don't know.
And you didn't really see him, and he was in the thick of it too. With how much he was obviously with Hulk, and then again, not a lot from Cena that you thought. And Cody Rhodes was just there to talk about the good stuff.
Yeah, well, now he's the golden.
Well, yeah, he's the golden goose boy. There's something.
Yeah, he's been. Don't really. Yeah, Tony Atlas has been brutally honest and hilarious. Yes.
And there was something else I was gonna say, and it completely just left my head. And then, also then, wrestler-wise, really Trish was the only female they had.
Mm.
And then also, she also kind of talked out of both sides of her mouth because how much Vince was a father figure. She loved Vince. Didn't see an issue with the bark like a dog segment, which I was a little ooh, okay.
Mm.
She's like, we knew what we were doing. And I was like, okay. And then she was like, well, also there was something he wanted me to make out with another female talent. I said no. And then, coincidence, I dropped the belt the next week. So it's you're talking about being punished for going against Dad. And then here's your consequence.
Yeah, it's true.
But again, they didn't talk. The only other females around there was the woman from the USA Network, and there was another woman who was a wrestling journalist person.
Yeah, no, there wasn't very many female.
You did have Linda and Steph, but it was all right, that's family. I would be interested to see another female perspective. Fair
enough. Well, Full-Time Fanatics makes you think how much we truly don't know and is kept hidden.
He also, that's the first thing he said when he sat down in episode 1. He's like, I wish I could tell you the truth, because that shit.
Mm.
So it's are you, again, it's I feel like he contradicts himself. I think he talked on both sides of his mouth. And then I believe it's open episode 6. Again, we watched that this morning. That he was like, I have the computer in my brain, and it doesn't get along, and the one brain singing this, and the other computer singing that, and there's a third computer that I can tap into. And then the interviewer was like, well, what's the computer, thinking about? And he's like, sex. I was like, oh, God.
Yeah.
Gross old man.
I know, what is he now? He's got 70.
70, I think is he close to 80 at this point?
He was
in his 40s around Mania, early Manias.
It wouldn't surprise me if his health, not to be with all this stuff and the stress, took a big.
Well, there was one thing that came out that it was somebody. It was somebody's brother or heard from somebody that Vince's health wasn't great, and then his lawyer came out and was like, Vince is fine. So who's to say?
Yeah.
I just think he's one of those because they touted that his mother lived to 100 and something, and then Vince is also going to live to 100.
When you have a lot of money, you can get all the good drugs to keep you alive.
Very true. So I don't know. I don't know, and that's not to wish that upon anybody, but when he does, how are they going to treat it?
Mm. No, it's interesting. I don't know.
You can't cut a beautiful what they've done, promo pack, what they did for Alpha and Sika, the last two that I remember passing.
No.
You couldn't do something beautiful like that.
No.
Do you do a 10-bell salute and say goodbye? Can you even do that?
We don't know. Maybe our audience knows. Let us know.
But I don't know. There's this again. It's only they have 100 hours worth of stuff. We only saw 6. Like I feel like I want there to be like a part 2.
There might be. You never know. Now Netflix has more invested. So
yeah, I don't know. I feel like I think because I said this to you, like obviously we're in it. We've been watching wrestling our whole lives. Every documentary comes out, I watched. All the Dark Side of the Rings, all the 30 for 30s that they've done on wrestlers. Like I've watched them all the WWE produced stuff. If we weren't this closer, like if it's someone like our mom's coming to watch us and be like, what the what? Like this guy is crazy pants.
Yeah.
And I think also Kotala made the great point. It was like Tiger King was so crazy to everyone because no one's in that tiger, like not a huge people are in that tiger keeping community. So everyone was like, what is this? That was the biggest thing of the pandemic. With like wrestling, there is an audience that's in the know.
Yeah.
And then so I think enjoy is the wrong word, but would I thought this more fascinating if I wasn't so in tune to it?
Maybe.
I'm
not sure.
I just want again. You have 100 hours. He gave me 6. Mama wants more. I want all the details. I want to hear him word for word.
All right. Well, Nikki wants more. We'll see if we're gonna get more. They gave us 6 hours. We gave you 1. We didn't go the full distance. This has been fun.
But if you want more, tune to us tomorrow.
Good point. Tomorrow we are back here at 6 Eastern time, whatever that is for you. We are recapping Bad Blood, Ncwhfest.
My birthday extravaganza.
So we hope that you join us tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern to recap Bad Blood. But in the meantime, this right way, you do not have to go home.
But you can't stay here. Bye.